Well, good evening and welcome to the third installment of UPSL Live here on Instagram Live. We have got another great episode lined up for you today. Eric Wynalda. Eric Wynalda is going to be with us. If you've missed the last two episodes, we did Justin Hoyt in the first one. Great chat. And we had a long chat with Paul Cagliari, and I have Eric Wynalda here ready. Eric? I can hear you. You there, Eric? Eric, how are we doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, bit sick and tired of the four walls and everything. How are you coping with the lockdown?
So we've got I got five of my kids with me. My oldest is still up in Seattle, but five kids and a dog. We only have four beds, so you do the math. It's been kind of crazy, but we're surviving.
Good to hear it. Well, Eric, I mean, I've waited a long time to speak to some international soccer players, and then two turned up in 1 week. I had a chat with Paul, and 106 caps for the US men's national team, Eric. How is it as a player from America going over to Germany? Because you went over and you started your career in Germany, really, it's fair to say, isn't it? What was that experience like?
Well, I mean, it actually did start a little bit prior to that, and it's really is the premise of what I still hold very dear to my heart is the lower divisions, if you will. Way back then, we played in what was called the APSL, and we had a very good team. It was guys like Dominic Kinnear and Danny Pena, a Chinese international and whatnot. So I was actually playing on a team where I was very fortunate. My assistant coach was Paul Mariner. So I spent a good 3 months with Paul Mariner teaching me how to be a striker. So when I finally stepped onto the field in Germany, and when the deal went through, I just felt like I didn't know I was prepared until I actually was able to perform. But Paul Mariner's work with me and his knowledge and his demeanor and just the relationship we had proved to be very helpful. So as nervous as I was, and to bring up Paul Caligari, he was the first call I made. I drove to his home, and we sat down. And he told me what the contract meant and what everything looked at, what I should do, and he was really helpful at helping me understand what exactly I was getting into. So I walked into that a little bit of understanding that everything that happened after me being the first one. I was carrying the flag for a lot of guys I didn't know, and for a lot of kids that weren't even born yet. So it was a lot of responsibility.
How did you find it in Saarbrücken? It's an interesting part of Germany, isn't it?
It is. So it's right on the French border. So it's out in the south. And it's kind of funny because the way I speak German now, people from Saarland recognize it immediately. It's kind of like being from the south, because I talk like this when I'm speaking in German. So they immediately recognize my accent, because it's I don't speak Hochdeutsch, which there's a lot of slang and things that I say that the Saarlanders are very proud of. But it was a great little start. It was a great little town. Ironically, as a child, I had a phobia for bridges, and then the only club that would sign me in Europe was Land of Many Bridges, translated. So I had to get over that phobia in a hurry. But Saarland is still, and Saarbrücken, the club, we still in contact. It was a wonderful place to play.
Well, I noticed when I was doing a little bit of research, there's actually an ex-MLS player playing there now. Kian Sprouse is over there, formerly of the Whitecaps.
Right.
So there we go. You blazed the trail for all these young players, Eric. I want to talk about the US national team a little bit, because I think as a fan, it's always nice to know what it's like for you guys who have played for your national team. Like, what an honor it must be. How that free kick against Switzerland in 1994, when that one hit the back of the net, did that one feel a little bit more special?
I've never heard a stadium get that loud. That was the one thing that I'll always remember. Is it almost felt like a spaceship was going to take off. Claudio Reyna was supposed to take him, and he pulled his hamstring 4 days prior to the game. And when the foul actually happened, I think Harks got fouled, and I just went into this mode of realizing that, one, we didn't really have a plan from that distance. We had one from closer, which we were going to touch it to Marcelo and he was going to hit it. And I just grabbed the ball and that it was mine. I practiced them, but the good news was that the night before, against my coach's wishes, I went out and hit a few on the field, and I realized that you can't overhit them. I don't know if it was just the indoor part of it, and the ball that we were using, but in that moment, I was able to remember, and I was lucky I did it the night before, not to overhit it, just to let it be a smooth stroke, a good 3-iron. Put right where it needed to be, and I can honestly say it's the only time in my career it went exactly where I was aiming.
Yeah, if you're watching this now, go and look it up on YouTube afterwards. Eric Wynalda, USA versus Switzerland, 94, beautiful free kick. The one other thing about the national team, Eric, is that you played in the Copa America. I think that was 95, right? In Uruguay. How was that as an experience? And would you like to see the US men's national team going back into the Copa America?
Well, at the time, and I still believe, those competitions, you're going to learn a lot about yourself as a team, as a player. I think, some of the wins that we had, not just beating Chile right off the bat, we had never beaten, I think at that point, we had never beaten a South American team on South American soil. So that was a first. It was a great game for us, but beating Argentina clearly with guys like Diego Simeone and Zanetti and Batistuta, Ortega, it was an unbelievable challenge for us. But I think those competitions are where you learn how to win, and you also understand that playing beautiful soccer is not a priority. Our team, if you look back at that group, and we still talk about it today, that everybody wants to say, "Oh, are we better now than we were then?" Or whatever. What would have happened if that team in '95 would have played against the team of today? What are the differences? There's a lot of things that we can talk about, but those competitions are so vital to understanding. They're not an opportunity to see if the young kids can play. No, they're not. It's an opportunity for us to put our best 11 on the field and let them go. Find out what they're all about.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think more games against top quality opposition would improve the national team in this country? Or do you think we play the right teams at the moment?
It's always tough, and there's a lot of negotiating that goes into these things. I find it so funny that people haven't figured out the correlation between when MLS signs a big player, like a Thierry Henry, and all of a sudden we're playing France twice. We signed Beckham, and we played England for the first time in a decade a couple of times. But there's a lot of complications that come into and the push and pull with our federation and some of the other components of soccer in this country. But you have to start figuring out what you're going to be up against in a World Cup competition, because ultimately that's what we're preparing for. We're not preparing to build out of the back against Panama. That's not what we're preparing for. What we're preparing for is getting stuck in a World Cup competition against an informed Italy. That's what you need to start worrying about. So I think the most important component of our national team right now is figuring out. I think Jurgen Klinsmann actually did a pretty good job of this. We were always put in a spot where we were forced to learn. And if Chris Wondolowski puts that on the back of the net, we're not even having this conversation. It would have been a wonderful day. But look, I think it's so important and vital to make sure that we get our best guys together as much as possible. I mean, that doesn't mean kill them. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't expand the player pool. But we got to get those guys not just having practices together, but having lunch and dinner together. They got to get to know each other. The World Cup, or the national team for that matter, is forced friendship. It's a bunch of egos that come into a room and have to have a common goal, and not until they know each other and they actually are friends. Sometimes they don't have to be friends, but at least they know what their objective is. Only then are we going to become a great national team. I look at our team right now, though. We've got talent across the board. Across the board, if you look at Tyler Adam, and if you look at if he can play with McKinney, if Pulisic can get healthy, Sargent has looked great. Weah is a player. Dest is in my opinion someone that we can build off. Stefan's a great goalkeeper. I still like Yedlin. A lot of people don't, but I think that this is a team that if they can figure out how to get on the same page, not only could this been a very unique Olympic situation, but also a World Cup that we could hang our hat on.
It's interesting, Eric, that you mentioned being on the same page if you're not necessarily best friends with the person sitting next to you in a locker room. Why can't we get on the same page? The leadership of soccer in this country, why can't everyone get on the same page and get a bit of unity and move the game forward in a broadly agreeable direction for everyone?
Well, look, I tried that. I ran for president. I understand how fragmented and just completely all over the place that we are as a soccer nation. And it's like a big boat where you're always going to have 3 or 4 people on that boat pulling the wrong way. The easy answer to that is pick that person up, throw them out of the boat, and keep going. That actually happened today and yesterday with the elimination of a lot of people in the United States Soccer Federation. So the new boy in charge, Wilson, looks like he means business. He wants to change things. So we'll see what that equates to. But I think it's such an enormous endeavor to have everybody have that commonality of all understanding one thing. And one thing is all we should understand is our job as soccer people is to become the greatest soccer nation that we possibly can be. And everyone understanding their roles. And not until we all stop fighting with each other and we start fighting with the opposition are we going to be a better soccer nation. I think that's the last thing I said on my speech in Orlando. I still believe it today. I do think that this country has enormous resources and enormous potential. But my father once said to me, the worst thing that anybody could ever say about you is that you had great potential.
Well, that's a very powerful thing to say. Was that run for the presidency, Eric? Was that an eye-opener for you? Did you learn some new things from that experience?
I mean, what could you not learn? I mean, every day you were forced to deal with a new agenda, and constantly I would hear this phrase, well, that's not the way we are used to doing things. And whether that's getting on the FIFA calendar, understanding the implications of that, whether that's understanding that there needs to be a connection between our top divisions and our lower divisions, understanding that the youth organizations that currently exist need to understand how they are a part of the developmental process without getting a little selfish and say, well, that doesn't make sense to us because we don't make as much money as we used to make. Those are all things that I learned the hard way. Every room that I went in was a conversation where not only would you try to find out what the problems were and how could you fix them. Most of the time you go into that room and the problem wasn't their problem. All they wanted to do is talk about somebody else and how somebody else was making their business unfeasible and not feasible. But so it was such a difficult time. The one thing that I am happy with is that I didn't win, and I am where I need to be, and that's managing, because it's always something that I've wanted to do, and I'm going to try and build this career in the same manner that I built my playing career. I want to earn it. I want to earn the respect of anybody that is going to make a decision on what they think of me as a manager. I mean, it's funny because it's kind of in vogue right now to talk about Jurgen Klopp, but I know Jurgen Klopp from we played against each other. He actually marked me in 1993 in Mainz, yes. And because David Wagner, who was also the manager of Schalke, was going to be a teammate of ours, so on the national team. So I made it a point to try and get to know him. But what Jurgen has done, and I can't have any more respect for some of what he's gone through. I mean, everybody has their different paths, but to go from Mainz to Dortmund to Liverpool, and to be able to change the culture of each of those clubs the way that he has been phenomenal. And the way that he's gone about it, it's not it's not just serious all the time. He and I actually think we have a very similar sense of humor, but that's the way I think things need to get done. I mean, when you get your players to understand what a beautiful job they have, and to get them to understand that the way that we're going to play is going to equate to success, that's when the game is beautiful, and it's been wonderful to see this happen for Liverpool.
So you mentioned your coaching career, and of course you did. I think, if I'm correct, LA Wolves in the UPSL. You were a coach there.
Yeah, I don't think we lost a game. No, I think we lost one game at the end. But I mean, Jan Square, and I first started talking about that, and being able to really dive in and to see the passion that exists at the UPSL level. The Wolves was a great team, and we had some resources that made things a little bit easier on us than most teams. But what a wonderful experience! What a wonderful chance as a manager to really figure out how you're going to win under those circumstances. I think I learned more in those years in the UPSL than I did in the NESL or any time as a player. It's an incredible experience.
So, so definitely, you would say then that that experience really, gave you some tools to take then to Las Vegas Lights in the USL. It was a good sort of step in that direction.
Well, absolutely. UPSL, and what you find in what I to a fault, I have a lot of heartstrings, and I brought some players into a professional environment here in Las Vegas simply because I wanted it for them. And sometimes what I found was that if you're dealing with a flawed individual or someone who is just too far down the road, you end up doing you're doing the team a disservice if you're unable to just second, third, fourth, fifth chance. That might be too much, but there was a couple of guys that really embraced the opportunity, and that's what this job is. This job is ruthless. You have to identify the players and the people that not only that can do this, but they want to do this and they want to get better and they have that drive and ambition. Everybody can talk about it, but you really have to have a keen eye to see which players are really serious about the way that they address their profession, not the way that they strut around and call themselves a pro. That doesn't make you a pro. A pro is what you do every day.
Of course, the topical thing at the moment is the US Development Academy and what's happening there, and it's closing down. What's your point of view on that? I mean, how did you view the DA when it was running, and do you think it's going to be a big loss?
I don't think it's going to be a big loss. I do think soccer is going to happen anyway. I thought it was to a certain extent, a way to manipulate the talent pool to make things easier for the federation to a certain extent. My daughter participated in it. I watched my daughter dance around our living room last night when she found out that she was going to get to play high school soccer again. And the joy that personifies was what I care about. I want my daughter to have a good experience in the game. Everybody wants to talk about the next level. Everybody thinks they have an understanding of what the next level is. I would actually, not to sound arrogant here, but I think I have an idea what it is. And a lot of times we believe that if you put the best players on the field at the same time, that something magical is going to happen. That's not true. The reality is when you are at lower levels sometimes, and you in a millisecond are able to understand what your teammates can and cannot do, and it changes your decision making. That's the next level. It's millisecond thinking of, I can't pass it to that player to the left foot, or I can't put that player in because they're not going to win that race. So I'm going to fake this and come out of that. Now, the hard part is to be the scout, to be the evaluator of talent. We have, in a very robotic way, unfortunately, got our kids playing all the same way. And then some people think that's we're identifying a style of play. No, you're not. We are looking for personality. We are looking for special qualities in people and players that make them an asset. That's it. One of the when this thing went down, I made a comment. I said, look, I just don't, I'm very pleased to see my daughter have this opportunity to really enjoy the game, because enjoyment is everything to me. And somebody, of course, the DA, I guess, academy director, chimed in and said something along the lines of somewhat of a rebuttal. My point is that you can't replace the reaction that players have and that pride of playing for your school and playing in front of your peers and the pressure that goes along with it. My point was, a lot of the DA games were manufactured games that we didn't see a lot of personality. We saw a lot of pass and move, pass and move, pass and move, and everybody doing the same thing. My point to that DA academy director was essentially, look, I get it. Your job is to sell something. I'm buying. I'm a coach now. And all I care about is, have you developed a player to the point where I would want to employ them for my club because they can do it. That's all I care about. I don't care about what your idea of development is. I care about, I need a special player to fit this role in my team. Have you been able to produce that? If we continue to go in the robotic way, we're just going to have robots. We need to start really focusing in on the special talents and having players that have the freedom to play and express themselves out there. And on the women's side as well, I've got 4 daughters. Yeah, I clearly care about it. It was a hard decision for my daughter. She stayed with the DA. She felt the pressure, but it was an enormous source of stress for her. And I just feel like she's just going to have so much more fun playing high school soccer.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. When you start out playing the game, you play for the enjoyment of it. You're playing for fun, aren't you? And I think the best players professionally, they go out and play with a smile on their face. They want to play. So I think you got to drill that into them quite young. A couple of questions in the chat, Eric. Your favorite player currently, not necessarily American, but anyone out there?
Oh, wow. My favorite player changes every day, so I apologize for that. And I think that the best player in the world changes every 15 minutes. It's all about form. But who do I enjoy watching play? I think we all went through that Barcelona stage where it was just for me and my son, it was Iniesta was always someone that I just really enjoyed, just the way that he made everyone around him better. It's a hard question. I think that currently, it depends on the league. It really does. When you look at the national team in the past, I've always enjoyed watching Clint Dempsey, for example, and I was really starting to enjoy Pulisic in his start at Chelsea. But that's a hard one. Because it changes. I watch so much soccer. I mean, I just watch so many different games. I mean, it's gonna maybe. Some people won't like to hear this, but Mo Salah is a selfish player. I get so frustrated watching him. I'd rather watch Firmino because Firmino is the ultimate teammate. And, that works. I mean, would you have ever thought that Mane and Mo Salah and Firmino would be the best front 3 in the world? No, you would go along the lines of a Neymar, a Suarez, and a Messi and think that would work. But, yeah, it's a hard question. I'm sorry. I don't really have a specific answer. I watch so much soccer of old and so much of today that it changes every 10 seconds.
So, Eric, with this, the thing with the coronavirus and not being able to play at the moment, how do you think that's going to affect not only your club, but all the clubs, like lower league clubs in this country? Do you think it's going to have a serious effect, or do you think we can get back to where we were before reasonably quickly?
Well, I do believe that we need to be cautious. We have to be I understand that so many of us are missing, live sports in general. I mean, it's such a big part of our fabric. And usually in times of tragedy, sports is what saves us. Sports is what brings us back. And we're able to lose ourselves in competitions that we care about. But we have to be careful right now. I do think that the USL is in a very unique spot because there really isn't as many fans as maybe in Major League Soccer. It's not going to be 40,000 people. It's going to make 4,000. So being able to manage that might be a feasible option for us to get back on the field as long as it is safe. And that's the only thing that we should care about. We have to stay in a sterile environment. We have to make sure that all the players are tested, that we're not passing this thing to our opponent or anybody that we come in contact with, to stay in quarantine and stay in isolation when we're not playing, which is probably really good for my guys. We're in Vegas, for crying out loud. But I think if it's really helping us and myself as a coach to be a better manager, because we were able to address so many things that you can't address in season. Whereas we do a lot of preseason testing and we find out what their deficiencies are. And we're able to, on an individual basis now, address those things to make them better players. But in the long run, I do think eventually we'll get back on the field. It will be wonderful to when that day comes. But in the meantime, we have to be smart. We have to be vigilant. We have to make sure that we're not just protecting ourselves, but anybody else that could be vulnerable to this disease.
Yeah, that's, we've got to be careful, and you're absolutely right. That's the most important thing. Now, I did put a few feelers out for some questions, Eric, and this is
okay.
This is quite a hard question. This is from Non-League America. That's at Non-League USA on Twitter. Very sort of well-run blog on lower league soccer.
I know that one. Yep.
Yeah, and he's asked it specifically. So this is in quote marks. What's it going to take to make actual systemic change in the federation and fundamentally separate Soccer United marketing influences from the federation?
I saw that on Twitter. Yeah. Now, look, I think I went through this in my presidential run. The what's it going to take? It's going to, and this is just, I'm just going to tell you straight up. It's going to take leadership. It's straight up leadership and soccer knowledge. We've been told for so many years that the United States Soccer Federation needs to be run by a businessman, and clearly that doesn't work. We are at a stage now where soccer is at a stage where it can go to the next level. But if you never know where that next level is, or where that next room even looks like, you don't think it's necessary to go there. You can consider everything to be a success story, and we just keep pushing in all kinds of different directions. We don't really have a pyramid. We have a tree that just branches whatever way it wants to go. So until we get real leadership, until we have a real plan of exactly how to address all of the facets of soccer that run this machine and connect those dots, then we're still going to stagnate.
That's a pretty comprehensive answer to that. Pro-Rel for that?
Of course. Pro-Rel changes everything. And I think I understand the implications and the financial implications of Major League Soccer, because it's a franchise. It's not clubs. These are franchises. There's a big difference. People need to know that. You buy your way into this thing. You don't earn your way in. So earning it, just like I've just stated, that as a player and as a coach, that's the only way that I believe that I can have any integrity. If we can ever implement promotion and relegation to give those smaller clubs that ability to grow. All it is right now is you can put a seed in the ground and it can grow to a couple of inches, and then if you don't provide water, it will never get any bigger. And that's what we do. As soon as we identify this would be beautiful flower that's trying to grow, we say, all right, hold on, they're not part of the plan. Let's cut their water off. And the promotion relegation is a stream of water that if you get in the right current, you end up being in a much better place, and you grow into something special. And that's just what we've been very preventative of. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I think that some of the smaller hot pockets in our country, given the opportunity, could grow into something beautiful. But we just got to give them that chance. And promotion relegation does that.
Yeah, I think obviously the UPSL, some of the regions do have the Pro-Rel. If you've got a question for Eric, drop it in the comments here. We'll try and get to a couple of them before we sign off here. What else have we got here? How is life in Las Vegas?
It's actually different than a lot of people would think. Vegas is we live up in Summerlin, so we're about 25 minutes out of the city, if you will. It's a great place to raise a family. The other good part about Summerlin is, people don't realize that we're at about 4,000 feet elevation. So the temperature drops when it's 100 down there, or in the valley, it'll be in the 80s up here. So there's a good part of that. But it really is a great place to be. I had that experience because in my playing days, I bought a home out here for tax purposes, to be honest. And I lived here for a good decade in my playing days. So I was already familiar with not just the golf courses, but the communities. And it was a great place to live then, and it's a great place to live now.
Great. Well, one other thing I want to touch on here is the Atlanta Silverbacks. Your time there, and you had that sort of, they created that dual role for you. Well, how was that as an experience?
Well, I mean, it really reminded me of how the importance of being all in. When I was with Atlanta, I still had a great job at Fox, which let's be fair. When I talk about earning it, and I talk about basically proving to people that I can manage, that really wasn't a good example, because I had this great job that made a lot of money to be on television 3 or 4 times a week. The rest of the time I got to be a great dad. I got to take my kids to school, pick them up, and do homework and all that stuff. And when you're a coach, and I just spent probably 4 or 5 hours with my assistant coach, Kel Phillips here. We've gone. I mean, he's fallen asleep probably because we've watched the San Diego Loyal game 15 to 16 times and broke it down as much as you can. You just got to put so much into the job. Right. And I couldn't do that in Atlanta. I had to delegate. I was still holding down my Fox post, so I was commuting to Champions League games, but still making the game on Saturday in Atlanta. So that's what that means is fly from Atlanta to Munich, and then do the
transatlantic flight, and then have to cut. Wow, okay, that's a lot of
on a weekly basis, which was really interesting because I went from I remember I think it was Madrid because we had Atleti was playing against Chelsea, and I did the game, and then we got up in the morning, flew to Munich, and then did Bayern's game, and then I flew back on a Thursday to coach Atlanta, and then I was back on a plane on Monday, and I had to go to London for the second part of that game, and then I think I ended up in Portugal and then home again. So contrary to popular belief, I was not Skyping it in. I was just a very tired person. And but again, the reason why I think ultimately it was somewhat of a success, we did win the league, but we were unable to win the final because it was 2 seasons. It was the spring and the fall, and we ultimately lost to the Cosmos 1-0. But I wasn't all in. In Las Vegas, I'm all in. So I'm here every day. There's never a time where something else outside of my family is more important than my team.
Well, I mean, everything is a learning experience, isn't it? And I guess, you had a successful playing career and then you go into coaching, you're always going to keep learning. And I'm sure now with like Las Vegas Lights, you're still learning every day, like all of us are in whatever we're doing. We did get another question, a very common question here is, any advice for young players, people who are just starting out?
It's so simple. Be yourself. Be yourself, because, and it doesn't mean don't listen to your coaches, but if someone's telling you to be something that you're not, don't do it. Don't do it. I think one of the things the advantages I had is I had so many influences as a young, 13, 14, 15. It was an Italian, an Austrian, a Mexican. I had so many different ideas, but I was able to really always just kind of stay true to myself. I think it's a case study in itself. What we understand about, especially young kids, and parents need to understand this, is that stage of play is really between 4 and 6 years old. And that's right where we introduce our children to 2 things, sport and school. So the last thing your kid wants is to go to school and to have all of that structure and to have to sit there and listen and listen and listen and all of that, and then come to practice at the end of the day and go through it all over again. Let them play. Especially at the first component of it, the first time that they touch the ball, let them enjoy it. Don't try and overcoach them. Let them learn. That's how you learn, is by playing the game, not by being told how to trap a ball. It takes patience. It's not as important as people are making it, but you find out in a hurry which kids want to play and which kids don't. And those are the ones that ultimately should be playing. And it's okay if they don't. My 5-year-old, God bless her, Blake, I went to her first game, and I just was like, oh my God, is this child related to me? She was walking away. She wanted to pick a flower. She wasn't interested. Yeah. And I tell this story all the time about my son, who's 18 now. When he was very young and impressionable, he saw a video. I took him to a game at the Home Depot Center back then, and we walked on. It was one of those celebrity games, and they showed the video of all the old guys, and he saw that, and it hit him, and he basically grabbed my hand and he said, "Daddy, I don't want to play soccer." And I said, "Why don't you want to?" And he said, "I'll never be as good as you." And it really hurt, because he just saw, oh my God, this is important, and I don't want that pressure. And it took a long time before we were able to get him on the field to play. Now, flash forward to my now 15-year-old Tatum. When she took the field for the first time, I called my dad. I said, "You got to see this. This is unbelievable. She's ripping faces off. She scored 8 goals in the first 6 minutes, right? And she's so cute. She's got the ponytails and she's just a cute little 6-year-old. And after the end of the game, I walked up to her and I said, Tatum, you did great. I was so proud of you. She pulled me really close and she looked me right in the eye and she said, I'm going to be so much better than you ever were. So that's the difference between my two children. And it still exists today. She was a part of the DA. She, a lot of people thought she'd be destroyed over this. She was one of the leading goal scorers nationally in the DA. And still, when I saw her dancing around yesterday, because she's going to get to play with her friends in high school and represent her school, to me, that was more important than all the accolades she was getting with the DA.
Nice. That's a great story. One more question then. Toughest player you ever played against?
It's a toss-up between Jürgen Kohler, who is just a mean man. And I would say, and I was thinking Germany, actually, I think as a competitor, Lothar Matthäus. Lothar Matthäus was not just a great leader. And, at the time I was playing against him, he was, world champion because they had just won in 90. But just for his size, his speed, his commitment to it, when he hit you on a tackle, I mean, I think I'm still feeling it. Those guys were a different level. I mean, I played in so many different countries, the Maldinis of the world, which you don't want to play against either. And a guy like Diego Simeone, those, that man is the most competitive guy I've ever gone against. So there's a bunch, but I put Jürgen Kohler at the front of that list because he was not just strong and skillful, but he was a thinker, and he was always where he needed to be, and he made my life miserable.
Yeah, the opponents that make you miserable are usually the toughest ones. Eric, thank you so much for your time. This has been a great chat. Thank you for answering all the questions from all directions.
I didn't answer the one question of my, because it's just I don't have a favorite player, and I really apologize to whoever asked that. But that's to my point. As I leave you, I would say to anybody, don't fall in love with one player. Grab as much as you can from everybody, because everybody's different, and that's why we love them. That's
great, Eric. Good luck with Las Vegas Lights. Good luck in the USL. Thank you for taking some time out of your Thursday evening. I think it's Thursday. I'm kind of forgetting.
I don't know either. I might have forgot as well. We'll do it again.
Yeah,
Great to see you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Eric Wynalda, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.